Hey everybody, it's the Trout and welcome to another episode of the Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by. You know, when I use the word icon to describe somebody, it has to be somebody that's really the pinnacle at the top of their career. And luckily for me, I have one of those great musicians on my show today. And this guy has become and won multiple music awards, including at least 3 times as American Country Music Award Best Guitarist of the Year. He's been on tour with Bob Seger. He's been a session for players such great musicians as Lady A, Dolly Parton, Keith Urban, Buddy Guy, and just so many other people. His name is Rob McNelly. Now, if you're in Nashville and you want to do a session, here's the guy you want to call. And he gets called a lot by some very famous musicians because they know he's great at what he's doing. And you know what you get to know is you get to know his story about how he became the great session player. But also he gets to talk about the reason why he decided to do his own music. You know, it's great to play behind a lot of people and be with a lot of famous people, but sometimes you need to make your own voice heard. And that's what Rob did. He's got some new singles out and he's going to be talking about that. So if you want to know more about what it's like to be a session player in Nashville, with the best session players in Nashville, then you'll want to sit back and enjoy this episode with Rob McNelly. Next on The Trout Show. When did you realize, though, when was that moment you kind of go, I guess people want me to come in. I'm one of those guys. Was it kind of slow that you started out and then it's like, you're getting a call from so-and-so, can you sit in on this? Or I got a project. And when was the moment you went, hey, I guess I'm pretty good because everybody wants me to come in and to fill in. And I know people that are, like you, and I know you toured with people too. Mm-hmm. But once you get that notification, so to speak, that you are who you are, people want you. So when did you realize that, hey man, I think I'm a great session musician, but I'm more than that. But somewhere along the line you had to go, okay, I know what I'm doing now.
Well, that never becomes fully realized, I don't think.
Well, I understand that.
But I understand the word. Yeah, I understand what you're asking about. It's funny in terms of making the jump from being a sideman that played mostly on in bands on the road for people or touring behind people as a sideman, making that jump to session playing, that kind of hit me by surprise. The way that I wasn't monitoring that activity like somebody that might move here to do that. That's their goal.
Right. Yeah.
I was in Delbert McClinton's band at the time, and I had kind of
love me some Delbert.
Well, I kind of felt like I existed in the fringes outside of the mainstream of Nashville by being into his music and into that kind of music. They call it Americana, I guess, but blues.
Delbert's wrote some great tunes, though.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying because it's not Nashville music.
Right. And so I kind of thought, well, maybe I don't know I don't know how I fit into mainstream country records or mainstream Nashville session scene, that scene.
Yeah.
And man, it just happened because I would play with Delbert on the weekends wherever we would be playing, and then I'd be home Monday through Thursday, and I'd be playing clubs with anybody else, just picking up gigs.
Yeah.
And people just started asking me to do sessions. I didn't really feel like I was part of that for a long time, even though I was starting to get more active. I just kind of thought, well, yeah, people ask me to do it, and I do it when I'm available, which is the front half of the week. And then all of a sudden I got a call to play on a Lady Antebellum record, and I didn't know who they were brand new. And after that first record came out, there were a couple of big hits off of it. And I was all of a sudden a part of that sound. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was kind of probably the launching pad for everything that started to happen after that.
So how did they was it somebody you knew, or they heard you, or how did that with Lady A? Did this somebody you knew, their agent, or somebody say, "Hey, can you come in and sit on this?" Because I
Yeah,
know the way it works. We all know how it works. Somebody knows who you are.
yeah, you got to
They
be
already
known.
know. They've already heard you somewhere. I've heard, you know.
Well, I did know the producer, but he didn't call me because he knew me necessarily. He was aware of me.
Mm,
But because I was starting to play on a bunch of demos that were probably I probably played on some demos over leading up to that were starting to catch his attention. Um, he knew me as a person and he knew I was in town doing stuff, but he
right.
didn't necessarily know, you just start to get on the radar through the
Sure.
do a
Yeah.
bunch of demos with producers. They start noticing things that you might play, or who is that played on this demo? I like that guitar. That's different or whatever. I got to think, and honestly, I'm not saying this to slight myself. I bet they had somebody else they wanted to use that was more popular that was booked
Yeah.
on those days and couldn't do it, and then they called me, and then it fit. Like once I got in the room, it felt like everybody liked what I was doing, so they just kept calling me for the rest of the sessions.
And I'm not. I know who Lady Annabella is. Of course, now it's Lady A and all that stuff. But
Yeah, yeah,
how many people is it? Just the singers? Is it three people or four? I don't. I've never followed that. I'm not much of a country guy that much, but I know who they are.
yeah, yeah. It's the singers. I mean, they're the
Okay.
one make up
So they bring in people unless they go on tour and they hire people to go on with tour with them. Obviously, and they probably have their own band
yeah,
now by now. Obviously, or obviously been around as long as they have been.
yeah.
I guess also with it's kind of like acting. People get a style,
Hmm.
and it's like anything else. They go, I need that Rob McNelly sound.
Yeah,
Well, why don't we get Rob? Well, he's
yeah,
kind of, so I assume that works the same way with when you become a session person. They know who you are. They expect a lot of things out of you, but they also
yeah.
know who you are by that, just your styling.
Yeah. You kind of, well, the interesting thing about that is, yes, generally speaking, that is absolutely correct. But what's funny is to some people, uh, there's so many different producers.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah,
so everybody, and they all have different tastes
sure.
about what they like. So
Yeah.
when you're in a room with this person, he thinks of you as a pop player,
Mm,
and then because that's the kind of production he does, so you kind of lean into those stylistic choices more with him. And then over here you might work with somebody who really wants, I want you to sound like a band guy. Oh, Rob's great at sounding like a band guy, so to
yeah.
him you're this rough around the edges band guy. And then somebody else, like, I work on Buddy Guy records, like I'm a blues guy there. So as a session player,
Excuse me.
you kind of develop all these different camps where they tend to pigeonhole what they like from you, and that's what they call you for. So the key is to have a bunch of different camps. Does that make sense?
No, no,
Like,
no. I
yeah,
understand because I think I'm a fan of Tim Pierce.
yes, awesome.
Tim's a prime example of
Hmm.
that. I don't follow him too much on YouTube. It irritates me because he's so good. But I understand because he's talked about exactly what you said. I'm sitting here and so wants me, and I'm getting a call and I'm doing something completely over here, and I get a call from so and so. So you become, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you start out as having a style, but then you become the multi-tool that they need because you've
Yes.
already said, "Oh, he played on this. Hey, yeah." I mean, let's just talk about one of the few great blues people that are still around is Buddy.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that whole gig. I listened to the song. I was trying to figure, are you playing the wah wah, or is him playing the wah wah? What were you doing on that tune?
Oh, well, I mean, I've played on a bunch of records
I
for
forgot
him.
which one it was. It was on where did it's I it, there, My Guitar Talks for Me or something like that. I'm trying to remember the name of the tune.
Yeah, I would have to go back and hear
That's all
it.
right.
But if it was in the actual solo section, then it was probably him playing a wah.
Yeah, that's what I
But
was
if it
wondering.
was a part while he was singing, then it was probably me,
Okay.
is my guess. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, blues, I came up kind of being, really into that style of music and knowing a lot of history about it with those older.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Ohio.
Ohio, okay. And then you
Yeah.
got to Nashville, but I mean, I read a story about your dad and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was a country songwriter too,
Yeah.
performer,
Yeah.
and about your his 55 telly.
Yeah. 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 That's yeah.
Kind of like it's kind of like I've been being a Texan Billy Gibbons fan for years,
Oh
decades, I'll
yeah.
tell you. Billy was always the one collecting guitars, trying to find some
Mhm.
53 Les Paul or something like that. Was your dad, he was a country artist.
Yeah.
Was he, what kind of music did he play? I know what would you equate him to at that time that he was kind of he liked playing with, or that sound that he liked?
Well, okay, he had a band, it was a country rock band kind of. They were called McGuffey Lane, and they were signed to Echo Records in the 80s.
Wow,
And
there's
then
a
they
name.
started,
Atlantic,
yeah,
yeah, Edco. I've never done it in a long time.
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
they had their record deal out of New York, and it was because they had put out their own record in Ohio, and they were such a popular band regionally that they were outselling major artists with their own record in that region. And so of course record people back then, they would call
Yeah.
record stores and say, what's number one this week?
Yeah.
And McGuffey Lane kept popping up, and they're like, who's that? We gotta, that used to happen. Those kind of things used
Oh
to be
yeah.
able to happen. So
That
it
was
was in
on.
the
Yeah.
era. But then once they signed them, and they kind of tried to lean them a little bit more rock for
Mm,
the record, and that didn't really work as well for them. So then they got them down to Nashville, and then it was like then they were kind of competing with bands like Alabama, I
oh
guess.
yeah.
That was when Alabama was really starting to come on,
Yeah.
and so I think if they didn't sound like that, but that's what they were trying to market them like, you know.
And that's the sad thing about it too. I mean, that's the good news, bad news thing,
Yeah.
is the fact that they want their A&R people get you because you're unique or they like you.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then you get a producer in there that they bring in and they're like, well, we should change. And I go, oh, no, no, you got me because I like this. I do this.
Yeah.
Well, we need to change this so it's got a little puppy here. And you're like, and then but that's what A&R people do. I mean, they listen. And I was talking to somebody the other day. Who was I was talking to? I can't remember they were. I said, it was an indie artist, but they said, now A&R people, they watch TikTok. And they just,
Absolutely. I
I
mean,
just see the biggest way. Hey, are you busy? Come on down. I guess, I don't even have to get out of my office. I just stay at home, just call people up.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call myself an expert on the business, but I do overhear a lot of conversations on sessions that I work on, and I notice things about that. Yeah, here's the interesting thing about the whole TikTok driving the music business thing. They did go hard in on that for a couple of years, for the last few years, say. But it's very rare when those TikTok artists actually equate to any kind of ticket sales
Hmm.
or or break that those artists are able to break a song and get really famous. They can all point to examples where that has worked, but the thing that I feel like I'm hearing from the business side is, okay, we've tried chasing the TikTok numbers, and we're finding out that really we're just signing a bunch of artists that sound good in front of a camera for a minute and a half or whatever, and that doesn't equate to standing on stage and
Yeah, for
fronting a
2 hours.
band
Yeah.
in front. Yeah, I mean, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, obviously there have been huge anyone that I've worked with that has been successful that came up through TikTok. It was because they were already doing it and they got on TikTok.
Yeah,
But if
I
it's
can
the other way
understand that.
around,
Yeah.
where their only exposure is TikTok and they
Yeah.
weren't playing clubs or doing anything
Yeah.
else, they kind of don't have the depth as an artist. And then, you know,
Well, I think it's like my wife and I still watch after years American Idol.
Yeah.
And
Same
years
thing.
ago, I worked with one of them years ago,
Hmm.
and it's the same thing. I mean, when people come
Yeah.
on there and they go, "Have you performed very much?" Well, kinda. This is the biggest group I have, and I understand there's 3,000 people there. Not everybody gets an opportunity to play in 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and this is what I say to my wife all the time, and it's true. When they come on there and they're already good, they rarely win. And
Yeah.
it's because they've already got to the point, they're already really good.
Yeah.
And this year was a prime example. I saw people and I go, wow, I can't believe they're gone already. Well, that's because they're already up here. The other one started down here and they kind of go here, which is what
Yeah.
people always listen to. But you're right, because people that go on there, they've all, I don't care if they've been playing in bars,
Yeah.
or playing at the local fairs. They have experience,
Yeah.
as you know, because look who you've been with. And when you let's go to Bob Seger. I was watching your Bob Seger doing
Oh
Like a
yeah.
Rock slide part,
Yeah.
which of course is iconic. That
Yeah.
I don't know who did it on the original record.
Rick Vito.
Is that
Yeah.
who it was? I do
Yeah.
remember when he sold it to, was it Chevy?
Chevy.
For
Chevy.
$1
Yeah.
million. I remember that because they said they bought that rights to that song for $1 million. I remember when that happened. Um,
Yeah.
but you know when you play with somebody like Seeger and you walk on stage, excuse me, they already know what they expect. And
Yeah.
every night when you're there, they don't care if you had a cold, they don't care about any of that stuff. It's like you got to give it everything you can. And
Hmm.
even though you may not even know where you're playing, what town are we in
Yeah.
tonight?
Yeah. Right.
You still have to do it. How long did you play with Seeger?
Well, it was let's see, I did my first tour in 2013, and I guess we did a short little tour there in 2 months or something like that, and then
Yeah.
we did another one in 2015. We started one in 2017 that didn't go very far because he had hurt his back and had to have some
Mm.
surgery. And then once he recovered from that, we started up in late 2018, and we went well, 2018 and 2019 was his final tour.
Yeah, because I knew he quit. I, you know, and well, the fact is, we were talking about Buddy Guy a while ago. A lot of these guys are getting they're old.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
so it's
yeah,
like I know. I get up in the morning and go, I didn't have that hurt yesterday.
right, yeah, yeah,
And I always admire him because I saw yesterday that Clapton came out and did a video for John Mayall passing away.
yeah, yeah. I saw
And
that too.
you saw it too, and I'm going, dude, man, you're getting up there, brother. It's like he doesn't
Yeah,
care though. It's Eric Clapton. It's like
yeah,
I'm not gonna shave. Yeah, I got a rash or something. I don't really care. I'm Eric Clapton. I just want to thank this
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
And that's the sad part for me. So what I like to see, and I guess you get to see it, Robert, there is the younger people coming up.
yeah. Hmm.
And I've had the privilege of interviewing like four great artists. Two of them are in there in Nashville, they're harmonica players that are
Okay.
under 16.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
You get to see being in the business up and coming talent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, yes. They're usually at a certain level when I see them, though. Now, I mean, when I was playing clubs primarily, I saw a lot more undiscovered people that
Yeah,
were really
yeah.
great that I would run into later on that I knew were going to be huge or whatever.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? You know when you hear them.
Yeah, even if they don't have everything together, you can tell
Yeah.
there's something there. They're on their way to something, and other people, are just a little bit more less realized, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess that's a
yeah.
way to put that.
But don't you wish you could take them aside like a parent and go, okay, here's what you need to know. But you, you
It,
know,
yeah.
but you have to. That's the stuff you have to learn on your own accord. You know the way it is. It's just like honey, don't put your fingers in the socket. Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
told you
right,
not
right.
to. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I was when Behind the Music used to come on
Oh, I remember
VH1.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was a junkie for all that. I would watch every episode, and I started to notice that they all went the same way. Everybody gets signed when they're at the bottom and they don't really have any money, and that's why they sign a record deal, because they need that the business
Yeah, the
side to
advance. Yeah,
come
they need the
together.
advance. Yeah.
Yeah, and man, every one of them gets ripped off. I mean, you got to go through that. I mean, the people you trust at the bottom that you can afford to take care of you usually aren't very experienced people, and they're committing you to things that leave you wide open for someone to take advantage of you. And that happens. Now, I honestly, what's weird is I feel like it happens less so now than it
Yeah.
probably did with all our iconic people in the classic rock golden age.
Hmm.
Back then it was the wild, wild west. People didn't know anything about, but now these kids coming up, man, they know everything. They do. I almost don't need an entertainment lawyer when they look at a contract,
Well, that's good. That's good.
that it is good, and it keeps the business people a little bit more in check. Plus, they don't the deals are structured completely differently now. It's not the same thing
Oh
as when,
yeah, I'm sure
you
it's
know.
completely different. Well, you're not working about record breakage,
Yeah, yeah,
stuff like that.
they really should call them music companies instead of record companies. There's no physical product they're making. It's just they're creating this brand, out of an artist, you know.
Yeah, and I don't have no idea where it's going. I mean, it's interesting. I met with it's been about a year and a half ago now. I met with I can't remember the label. They were in town. They wanted to talk to me. It was the president of one of the major Nashville labels and one of the PR
Mm.
people there.
Yeah.
And I asked him, the guys were in their 50s probably, and I said, "Is it more difficult now or easier to get in the business?" He says, "Harder." And I said, "Why?" And I think if I don't remember, I think it's because there's so many people doing stuff now.
Yeah.
Everybody can sit around and do stuff,
Yeah.
and a lot of artists are gone independent. They don't want to deal with the labels anymore and do their whole thing from the indies, and then if they get picked up, then that's fine. But a lot of them don't want to be picked up, you
Yeah.
know.
Uh, Yeah, that's all true. I mean, there's so much more I mean, you can make a song this morning and throw it up online this afternoon if you want to, nobody's stopping you. And there's so much of it coming at that. Yeah, I don't it's just harder to stand out because
I
there's
think
so
that's
much
it.
out
I think
there.
I think that's it. And I think the other thing is because everybody's doing it now, a lot of people are doing crap because they don't know what they're doing, but
Yeah.
still, um, there's a lot of music out there, and I didn't really realize this until not too long ago. That music is a consumable product. We don't
Yeah.
think of it as that, but it really is because
Hmm.
everybody's looking for the next thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And you're like, okay, what do we have next? What do we have next? What do we have next? But then everybody counts on, which is always funny to me. I grew up in the Beatle era, is
Yeah.
all these streaming companies buying these catalogs, like the one Queen
Oh
just
yeah.
sold.
Yeah.
Everything's pre 90. So everybody wants to be new, but then on the other hand, it's like, well, we're selling, Buddy Guy stuff from
Right.
1983,
Yeah.
because that's the part that's interesting to me. So I have no idea. It's almost a balance between the old and the new. I mean, look where you are. Look at the people you've played with and the different, I mean, and look at the awards you've won for country. But
Yeah.
but the other part of it is you have to kind of keep up with what everybody's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me speak to what you were just talking about,
Okay?
because it like all these catalogs that are being bought, like Bob Dylan or
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen, all that. We've
Yeah.
seen those articles, hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, I mean, I saw when I started to see that trend, I was confused about that a little bit myself. Like, it's obviously this I think this company Hypnosis, that's the company that's kind of driving that
Mm.
movement. That's what I've been told. I don't quote me, but
I've heard of them. They've been around a
yeah,
long time.
they're a huge worldwide publishing thing.
Yeah.
And so you know what I think, and this is me being possibly conspiratorial about AI, because AI, the thing that's gonna take out first in from what everybody that I've talked to that works more in the sync world, that works more
Hmm.
like syncing songs and licensing them for
Yeah.
movies, commercials, or
Yep.
TV shows, all that. That's what's gonna, because the money in that area of the business has gone way down. I mean, I know that from playing on songs like that end up on national TV commercials or
Right.
something like that. That used to be a huge payday, like Rick Vito playing on Like a Rock for
Yeah.
that when the Chevy used it. That used to be a great payday for anybody that did that. And you had people that just played on those
Did
kind of
sync.
sessions
Yeah.
because you could make so much money. Nowadays, I mean, I've played on a handful of those kind of things that pay, so that you by the end of a year you maybe get a few $1,000s that
Right.
trickle in over the course of that year, where it used to be six figures. So that's a drastic difference. Now we've got AI where they don't now they can generate that without paying anybody. And it sounds just as good. It's not intended to be on a record that
No.
for a major artist. So that part of the business is going to get hit hard. Well, I think if I this is my theory, is that these companies are buying up all these old catalogs so that they will have some clout in the new era of AI where they actually own things that people are going to still want.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where there's no way to get that Bob Dylan song, or unless
No.
you deal with this specific company. So they're waging their future on intellectual property, basically,
It's funny because I just had a friend of mine. She is a assistant professor. I live 10 minutes from the University of North Texas, which is one of the
Yeah,
great liberal arts studios, schools in America. Great people. Don Henley went there. A lot of famous
yeah.
musicians, Nora Jones.
Hmm.
And she's in the business side of it. And she owns a company that helps people do their metadata for syncing. Because I told her, I said, I think I'm going to go into sync because I'm getting to the point now I can write a great rock song, but I don't worry about getting a million streams and making $300. I don't care. I mean, I'm not going to chase it. So we were
Yeah,
talking about that, and it's funny that you should say that because she said that we've had the situation, not so much with AI, but they like your song and they don't hire you, but then they hire somebody to make the song sounds just like yours,
yeah, yeah,
which is not AI, but that's exactly what they're going to do because then
yeah,
and she told me a great story about it, and I'll just make it short. She said she was up for a big commercial that was five figures. It was a pretty good deal, and she was in the end. It was between her, and she goes, I was in the last part of it, and they call. She said, kept waiting for the call. Weeks went by. Finally, she saw the commercial on TV, and it was on a Super Bowl commercial, and there was no music. They decided not to even put any music in it. She said, I went through all that,
yeah,
and they ended up not even doing it. And we
yeah,
talked about that, which is exactly what you're talking about. Sync is just like, and because you've done it, it's like a record company. You still have A&R people. They're not called A&R people. They're called
yeah,
music supervisors.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And to me, it's not about the. I don't really care. I just want. I'd like to write something that somebody has, and I go, hey, like I wrote that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's my song. If
yeah,
I
yeah,
make a
yeah,
thousand bucks off, I make $1,000. But it's just like
yeah.
something that's kind of like, But it's interesting too because I saw the statistics about Spotify and all those. People listen to
Mhm.
pre-90 music more than they do the new stuff. I mean, they were, but
Yeah,
I was thinking about Norman Greenbaum's song that's been on movies, "Spirit in the Sky."
yeah, yes,
I
yeah.
mean, how many times has that thing been used?
Oh
I mean,
man, it's hard to
and it's
say.
just a
That's
three chord. I
probably
mean,
more why people.
basically blues song.
Yeah, yeah, and people probably know it more through its licensing usage than they do because it was on the radio, you
Yeah, because
know.
I interviewed men without hats who did safety dance back 40
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah.
And I asked my granddaughter, she was 18 at the time. I said,
Hmm.
I'm getting ready to interview the guy with the, and she goes, what's that song? And I told her what it was. She goes, I know what it is. Now, I guarantee you, she had to see it someplace. She didn't hear it on the radio.
Yeah, she didn't know the band.
No, she didn't know the band. She knew the
Yeah,
song,
right, right, and she knew it from a commercial. Yeah,
probably. So
yeah.
tell
I
me a
mean,
little,
yeah. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, so now you've gone along, you've had a great career, but now you said, okay, I want to put my own stuff out.
Hmm.
When did you kind of change the, I know it's not a change, but when did you say, I think I'm going to start, you've probably been writing here probably a long time, but now I
Yeah.
want to release my own music. When did that come about? Was it last year? I mean, obviously it takes a while to do everything.
You know what? I've always written. That's really why I wanted to learn how to play guitar in the first place. I
I
wanted to
was
know
going to
enough.
ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to just learn enough chords to play so I could write songs. Um, from the time that I started learning guitar, I was writing songs. And and I've put out records before pre-internet. When I was in Delbert's band, I would put out CDs because he would allow me to sell them at his merch table.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, it was really cool. He was really supportive that way. But that's all. None of that exists anywhere because it was CDs, and it was before. Well, it wasn't before the internet, but we didn't have streaming
Yeah,
services.
yeah, yeah.
So, uh, man, I I think I just hit a period where I got so busy with session work after I left Delbert's band, that I just didn't have time to focus on it. And a lot of things were changing in my life. I had a daughter, um, you know, I had a family, so I was
Yeah.
like, you know, uh, and I was in incredible demand. For the first time in my life, it was a whole new getting used to a new schedule of like, yeah, I'm in town, but I'm working from 10 in the morning to 9 at night, like
Hmm.
most days
Hmm.
for years. And so now the session scene has all gone through a change too. Like I'm still just as busy, but I have my own studio now. So I have a place like when I've got a weekend free, uh, I could get people over to record songs that I'd been writing, and I just accumulated all this material over the
Hmm.
last several years, and people were like, "Hey, are you ever going to put that out?" I this popped up again on my, when you sent it to me, and I love that song. Why don't you put that out? Why don't you figure this out? And when I went back and kind of started listening to everything that I'd done, there were quite a few songs that I found myself still being proud of, and the recordings of them and everything. So I was like, yeah, well, it's time. Let's put this out. I mean, it's never gonna happen unless I just force myself to do it. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of it. You know, I don't. It's like I do have a great career, and session playing takes up most of my time, and it's still going strong. So I just kind of feel like, uh, I don't know. I'm not getting any younger. It's time to start, sharing some of this with whoever wants to hear it. I'm not, really trying to pivot my career or anything. It's
No, I
just,
understand. I mean, the
yeah,
thing about it for me, I think, is listening to you, and I think that would be with a lot of people. And a lot of people don't know about hired guns. They don't know how much they make.
yeah,
They think, I'm standing up next to fill in the blank, Bob Seger, or
yeah,
I'm playing a band with Lady A, and they've got 10,000 people.
yeah,
Oh, they must be rolling dough. No, the people up front are rolling dough.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just getting
yeah,
paid.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
also
And
understand because, it's another thing too, to, I was talking to somebody a few months ago, kind of a rhythm and blues guy, and he
mm-hmm,
said some of the sync songs that he'd sold. That's not what he did, but I was on a plane one time and I go, oh, that's my song. Well, nobody
Oh,
knows that.
right,
You
right.
know, you can say to him, hey, you know that little lead guitar part on this commercial for McDonald's? Yeah, that's me. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
But when you have your own stuff out, they go, oh, this is you.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know, I think it's a lot different. And you
yeah,
go, oh, yeah, it's me. Look, see, it says my name on there.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And see that where it says written by, you know,
yeah.
and all that stuff. And for what are the people that you know, I would imagine most of the people that you in session know about it. Probably pretty supportive, I would imagine. Like go. I mean, I would think that they just want to support you just as much as if they hired you to play in a session.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everybody's usually pretty supportive. I mean, I play shows around town with my band, and a lot of the people I work with, they'll come out and check it out and hang and yeah, I mean, when I drop a new song, they go and listen to it, the immediate community, yeah, they're pretty supportive. I mean,
So
yeah, they know they're
see,
not in danger of me stealing
uh,
anything away.
yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
So the other thing too about it is you played with so many people. Who was the longest term that you've been on tour with? Was it with Delbert? Was it with Seeger? I mean, obviously you did not too long with Seeger, but who was the longest term that you were on tour with, band wise?
Definitely Delbert. That was about 8 years. And I mean, Seeger would be the next one. The only difference there is Delbert was a continuous thing all through those 8 years. It was there was never really downtime. It's not that he played a ton. He wasn't like Bonamassa, where
Oh
you're just
yeah,
going.
every other night.
But as far as number of years, Delbert and then Seeger, but Seeger, you might go 2 years without hearing from him, and then he pops up wanting to record some new songs, and then he gets excited, and then he wants to go out on tour, and
Yeah.
you go out for 3 or 4 months. Uh, it's not a continuous thing. There's a lot of downtime in between those, and you just go back to your life and doing sessions and all that when you're not on tour with him.
When you started, you mentioned this earlier, you picked up the guitar.
Hmm.
Did you think that you'd be a session guy? What did you
Oh, I
kind
didn't
of
even.
do when you were a kid going, I just want to learn to play C, D, and G so I can play a song?
Yeah.
Uh, when did you kind of go from, I want to play and I just really want to get serious about it? What
Yeah.
was the kind of the change for you to go, okay, I think I want to do this for a living?
Well, there's a blur there. It wasn't immediately. First of all, I mean, I was 8 years old when I first laid my hands on a guitar, so obviously I didn't know anything about any of it. But uh, man, really, I always saw myself as when you're young, I think you just see yourself as being in bands a lot of times. I mean,
Yeah.
I just kind of I met other kids that could kind of play some songs, and we would learn the songs that the other one knew, and then
Yeah.
we'd go play the high school dance or
Yep.
whatever,
Yep. Yep.
and the whole time I was writing songs, and they would learn my songs, and we'd play covers in my songs, and I knew that I wanted to be a musician for a living. I guess by the time I was probably like 14 or so, somewhere in my teens, I knew I adults would respond to me when I would play, in ways that I knew that I was doing something that was impressing people who'd probably seen a lot of concerts and
Right.
knew
Right.
about music. So that was just kind of like, then it just became this carrot that I kind of kept chasing.
Yeah.
Um, and somewhere in there, I started to go, you know what? I I think this is what I want to do. I knew that I loved it enough to do it. I was already obsessed with the actual playing and writing and all that, but
Yep.
but that but I actually felt like I was getting good enough to where, wow, when I play, I Dream On by Aerosmith, it kind of sounds just like the record, you know, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just little nuggets come along that show
Yeah.
you that maybe you've got a shot, you know.
The thing about guitar is about a lot of instruments. You never stop learning. I mean, you really
Music, yeah,
don't.
you
And
never get it all the
and
way
you'd be
there.
around somebody and you're going, "Oh, I never thought about doing that."
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like they did the same guitar neck that I do and the same six strings. Why are they doing this? Um, and I was reading a little bit about your session work too. But I mean, yeah, obviously you're playing Nashville. Everybody wants to have a telly sound to it. But
yeah.
it didn't seem to me. It didn't seem like to me that you had. I see all the bank of guitars behind you,
Yeah,
but that's because you're in the studio. Um,
yeah.
you don't seem to be a kind of guy that's a pedal guy that uses a lot of pedals.
Well, I have a lot of them, and I do have at every session I go to. There's a pretty big pedal board, but you're right. Um modern music, a lot of it does require having that huge array of sounds that you can
Yeah.
get to quickly. And a lot of that comes from using pedals. But yeah, man, my default on a lot of the stuff that I play on, especially these last few years, is it's more about the musical idea. And I started to notice that, like, if I cover this, if I start putting a lot of, delay or reverbs
Hmm.
or the effects on it, I like spicing things up with a little bit of that, but I
Sure.
still I never want that to eclipse the actual notes I'm playing and the music that the hooks that I'm trying to put in this song. And man, more often than not, because so many people use their pedal boards to the extent that they do, I've started to notice that when people get most excited about my sound in the studio, it's usually when I'm running straight to the
Yeah.
amp, and that sounds exotic all of a sudden. It's like, wow, what are you doing there? I remember I did a handful of sessions for Keith Urban, and he kept going, man, I love that tone. How are you getting that tone? What are you using? And he kept looking. He'd come out and he'd kind of look at my pedal board, and I was like, hey man, I'm chords just going straight into the amp. I've just got the amp kind of cranked up in a way,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I just started to notice that I was getting really comfortable just playing straight into the amp.
But when you think about it, that's how we learned. I learned. I'm older than you, but nobody
Yeah,
had anything. I mean, they
right.
made a big deal about Keith Richards doing Satisfaction with a fuzz pedal. We didn't even know what a fuzz pedal was. What's that
Right.
sound he's making? We didn't have any idea. And
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix started me on, which I still have sitting right here on the floor, wah wah, which I
Oh,
love
cool.
playing.
Yeah.
I'm a wah wah guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the things we were talking about Bonamassa when he did his famous London thing that's on YouTube, and Clapton came out and played with him. He just took a, and he even mentioned it. He said he brings out a Strat, plugs a monster cable in the Fender, and he sounds like Eric Clapton. And let me ask you this question:
Yeah.
What call do you like getting the most when somebody says, "Can you come in and play on a session?" Which artist do you? Oh, I'd love to play on that stuff. I'm sure you have more than
Let's see.
one, but I mean,
Well, I don't want to discount the artist. There's certain producers that I like to hear from because I really gel with them, and
mm,
they produce maybe like four or five different artists that are all
right,
great.
yeah,
Uh, so it's a combination of probably the artist and the producer. Like anything Joyce calls me for, or Dan Huff. Yeah, I don't work a whole lot with Joey Moy, but when he calls, I like to do that. It I think our relationship as players comes into play more with the producers than the artists,
yeah,
is
I could
what
see that.
I'm saying, because
Yeah, I
they
could see.
stay around. I artists, if you do two or three records with an artist, they usually like to switch things up. So you're never gonna there's very few artists that you're gonna play on every one of their records they ever
No,
make. Like
No.
I don't really play on Lady A stuff, even though I was associated so strongly with that when they
Right.
were having all those hits.
Well, I think
But
people move on.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the artist always moves around because they got to try new stuff. They got to shake it
They're
up.
looking for new stuff too, and put some. My favorite guitarist, one of my favorites, passed away last year, is Jeff Beck.
Oh yeah,
Jeff was just phenomenal. I mean, nobody could replicate him.
yeah.
But he
That
he always was looking to something different.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Absolutely, absolutely. If you're a
and
true artist, you need to do that.
and like some of the stuff is like not like that. But the
Yeah.
one thing that got me about him, I saw him back in 2010,
Mm-hmm.
was the fact that I saw him at Bonnaroo,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't even do a sound check. He just walked out,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
I
and I and it, other people do that. Walter Trout, the great blues player, I know him. He said, "Yeah, I just walk out. I've had the same guy doing my sound for 25 years. He knows what to do." Blah blah blah.
yeah.
But the thing about Jeff Beck was, and not a lot of people can do this because he does use some effects. What he
Yeah.
did was how he could make it sound so close to the record when he played
I know.
out.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to these things. I remember when this stuff came out in the 80s when he had Bozio and some of the people playing on it and Guitar
Mhm.
Shop and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm going, yeah, how does he play that live? And then I hear it live and I'm going, it sounds just like the record,
I
and I thought, how amazing is that? And that was just amazing to me, that the quality of sound you could get out of that thing. It's just crazy.
I know. Well, it's him. That's the thing about like you mentioned some of the other people too, BB King. Like I mean, there's they're not hiding behind anything. This is really what they sound like, whether they use effects or not or any of that stuff. The
No,
gear never matters at
no, it
that.
doesn't.
You get that you've got something inside of you that's how you touch the instrument and
Yeah,
that's what comes out. And Jeff Beck is one of those. He's just as much of a magician as he is a
yeah,
music. You and I know what well, I don't, I claim to know what he's doing or be able to do it, but I do understand what
yeah,
he's doing with a Stratocaster, you
yeah.
know, but it's just really hard to do it. That's just how it
That's the
comes
way it
out.
was. I remember years ago somebody was talking about Guitarist and they were saying, I could give my guitar to Eric Clapton, my guitar, and he'd
Yeah,
start
yeah.
playing, he'd sound like Eric Clapton.
Yeah, I've had that experience with a lot of players where they'll pick up one of my guitars and it's like I wish I could make it sound like that. And then they say the same thing to me
It's saying
because
the same thing.
something that I take for granted that I just have done my whole life on a
Yeah.
guitar, someone else always hears that and goes, "That's amazing. What did you just do there?" And you're like, "What? This? I did this when I was 10 years old. I don't know."